Harper Daniels was running late for a date. She didn't even want to go on. Her best friend Olivia had set her up with the perfect guy, which in Harper's experience usually meant a disaster waiting to happen. As she hurried into Luciana's, one of the most upscale Italian restaurants in the city, she silently cursed herself for agreeing to this blind date in the first place. Little did she know, the night would take an unexpected turn that would change her life forever. Harper Daniels. A man with slicked back hair and an ill-fitting suit waved enthusiastically from a table near the window. That must be Martin, her date for the evening. Taking a deep breath, Harper plastered on her best fake smile and made her way over. "Hi, yes, that's me. You must be Martin." She extended her hand, which he grabbed and held for a beat too long. "You look even better than your pictures," Martin said, his eyes traveling down her body in a way that made her skin crawl. "I'm going to have a great time tonight." Not "we're going to have a great time," but "I'm going to have a great time." Harper already knew this was going to be one of the longest dinners of her life. Across the restaurant, Holden West, CEO of West Architectural Designs, was entertaining potential clients. At 35, Holden had built his company from the ground up, transforming it from a small local firm to one of the most sought-after architectural design companies on the East Coast. Tonight was supposed to be about securing a deal for a new sustainable housing project, but he found his attention repeatedly drawn to a woman with chestnut hair sitting by the window, looking increasingly uncomfortable with her date. So as I was saying, the quarterly projections for the Holden's client was mid-sentence when a particularly loud laugh cut through the ambient restaurant noise. "And then I told her, that's not what your profile said last night." Martin's voice carried across the restaurant as he slapped the table, clearly enjoying his own joke. Harper flinched, her cheeks burning with embarrassment as several diners turned to stare. "Could you keep it down a bit?" she whispered. "Oh, come on, loosen up," Martin said, pouring himself more wine. His third glass, Harper noted. "You know, you're really pretty, but you'd be even prettier if you smiled more." Holden frowned, watching the scene unfold. The woman Harper, he'd heard the loud man call her, was clearly uncomfortable, yet trying to remain polite. He recognized that look. It was the same one his sister wore when trying to extract herself from unwanted attention without causing a scene. "Mr. West." One of his clients waved a hand in front of his face. "Are you still with us?" "Yes, of course," Holden said, forcing himself to focus on the meeting. But throughout the next 15 minutes, he couldn't help but glance over at Harper's table, where things seemed to be deteriorating further. "So tell me about yourself," Harper tried, hoping to steer the conversation in a less obnoxious direction. "Olivia mentioned you work in finance." "Yeah, I'm kind of a big deal at my firm," Martin said, puffing out his chest. "Made more money last quarter than most people see in a year." "But enough about me, let's talk about you. Olivia said you're a children's book illustrator. That's cute, like a little hobby," Harper bristled. "It's actually my career. I've illustrated 17 books, 3 of which have won awards." Martin waved dismissively. Sure. But what's your real job?" "No offense, but drawing little pictures can't pay the bills, right?" Before Harper could respond, their server approached with their appetizers. As she set down Harper's plate, Martin reached out and grabbed her wrist. "Hey, sweetheart, when you get a chance, bring me another scotch. And maybe your number 2. He winked as the server pulled her hand away, looking uncomfortable. "I'll bring your drink right away, sir," she said professionally, though Harper could see the tension in her shoulders. "You shouldn't do that," Harper said once the server had left. "Do what?" Martin asked, genuinely confused. "Touch servers without their permission, or ask for their number when they're working. It puts them in an uncomfortable position." Martin's face darkened. "Oh great, you're one of those." "Look, I was just being friendly. Don't be so uptight." Across the restaurant, Holden was now only half listening to his clients. The woman's date had just harassed their server and now appeared to be berating her for calling him out on it. He watched as Harper shifted uncomfortably in her seat, clearly looking for an escape. "Excuse me for a moment," Holden said to his client, standing up. "I need to check on something with the maitre d'." But instead of heading to the front of the restaurant, Holden made his way toward Harper's table. He wasn't exactly sure what he was going to do, but he couldn't sit by and watch this woman endure any more of what was clearly a terrible date. As Holden approached, he heard Martin saying, "Should be grateful I'm even here. Do you know how many matches I get online? I could have been with any number of women tonight, but I chose you." Harper looked like she was about to get up and leave when Holden arrived at their table. "Harper Daniels," Holden said, putting on his most surprised expression. "I thought that was you. It's been ages." Harper looked up at him, confusion evident on her face. She'd never seen this man before in her life, but there was something in his eyes, a subtle nod, a silent communication that made her catch on immediately. "Oh my goodness," she exclaimed, playing along. "It has been forever. What a surprise to see you here." Martin frowned, looking between them. "You two know each other. Old friends," Holden said smoothly, extending his hand to Martin. "Holden West. Harper and I go way back. I hope I'm not interrupting anything important." "Actually," Martin began, but Harper cut him off. "Not at all. Martin and I were just getting to know each other." "It's our first date," she explained, giving Holden a look that screamed, "Help me." "First date. Well, how fortuitous that I ran into you then," Holden said. He turned to Martin. "You know, Harper here was always the most talented artist in our class. I'm sure she's told you all about her work." "It's really remarkable." Martin shifted uncomfortably. "Yeah, she mentioned something about drawing kids' books." "Not just any children's books," Holden said, his tone making it clear how impressed he was. "Her illustrations are collected by art galleries. She's a legitimate artist." "But you already knew that, right?" Martin looked sullen, caught in his earlier dismissal of her career. "I guess she didn't mention the gallery part." Harper stared at Holden in wonder. How did this stranger know about her work? She had indeed had a few of her illustrations featured in small galleries, but it wasn't common knowledge. "Harper, I hate to interrupt your evening, but there's actually something urgent I needed to discuss with you," Holden continued. "It's about the Phillips project. I know it's terrible timing." Harper had no idea what the Phillips project was, but she recognized a lifeline when she saw one. "Oh, the Phillips project. Yes, that is urgent." Martin's face had turned from sullen to angry. "So what, you're just going to leave in the middle of our date?" Harper hesitated, not wanting to be rude but desperately wanting to escape. Holden smoothly stepped in. "Sir, I apologize for the intrusion, but this is a business matter that can't wait. I'd be happy to cover your dinner for the inconvenience." He signaled to a nearby server. "Please put this gentleman's meal on my tab, table 14. The server nodded, recognizing Holden immediately. "Of course, Mr. West." Martin's eyes widened slightly at the deferential treatment. "Wait, West, as in West Architectural Designs." "That's right," Holden said simply, not elaborating. Martin's demeanor changed instantly. "Oh well, that's different then. Business is business, I understand. Harper, we can reschedule. I'll text you." Harper stood up, gathering her purse. "I don't think that will be necessary, Martin. Thank you for the drinks, but I don't believe we're compatible." Before Martin could protest, Holden had guided Harper away from the table and toward the restaurant entrance. Once they were out of earshot, Harper let out a huge sigh of relief. "Thank you so much for that." "You have no idea how awful that was." Holden smiled. "I could tell from across the room. No one deserves to be treated that way, especially on a first date. I'm Harper, by the way." Harper Daniels. But I guess you already knew that from eavesdropping, she said with a small smile. Holden West. And I wasn't eavesdropping so much as observing a woman in distress. Your date wasn't exactly being quiet. Ex-date, Harper corrected. And seriously, thank you. But how did you know about my work? The gallery comment, Holden looked slightly embarrassed. I recognized your name when I heard him say it. My niece loves the Luna the Brave Little Light series. Your illustrations are fantastic. Harper's face lit up. You've read my books to your niece many times. She's 6 and insists on them at every bedtime. I'm practically a Luna expert at this point. They had reached the front of the restaurant, and Harper realized she wasn't ready to say goodbye to this kind stranger who had rescued her from dating hell. I'd offer to buy you a drink to thank you, but... She gestured back toward the dining room. Actually, I was in the middle of a client dinner, Holden admitted. I should probably get back. Oh, of course, Harper said, feeling foolish. I'm so sorry for taking you away from your work. Don't be. Some things are more important than business, he hesitated. But I would like to take a rain check on that drink if the offer stands. Harper felt a flutter in her stomach. Absolutely. Here, let me give you my number. As they exchanged contact information, Harper couldn't help but notice how different Holden was from Martin. He was tall and well-dressed in a tailored suit that actually fit him, but it was more than his appearance. There was a quiet confidence about him, a respect in the way he spoke to her. I should get back to my clients, Holden said, looking genuinely reluctant to leave. And I should get home to feed my cat, Harper replied. He gets very judgmental when dinner is late. Holden laughed. A cat person, I should have known from your illustrations. Let me guess you're a dog person. Guilty as charged. Athena, my golden retriever, is practically my child. Harper smiled. Well, thank you again, Holden, my hero of the evening. It was my pleasure, Harper. I'll call you about that drink. As Harper walked out of the restaurant and hailed a cab, she found herself hoping he would call sooner rather than later. For the first time in a long while, she was genuinely excited about the prospect of seeing someone again. Holden watched her leave before returning to his table, where his clients were looking at him curiously. "Everything all right, Mr. West?" one of them asked. "Better than all right," Holden replied, unable to suppress his smile. Now, where were we on those projections? The next morning, Harper was still thinking about her unusual evening as she worked on sketches for her latest book project. Her phone buzzed, and she expected it to be Olivia, demanding details about the date with Martin. Instead, she was surprised to see a text from Holden. "Good morning, Harper. I hope you made it home safely last night. I was wondering if you might be free for that rain check drink this evening. No pressure if it's too soon or if you're busy." Harper smiled at her phone. Normally, she'd think a next-day text was too eager, but after last night's disaster, Holden's straightforward approach was refreshing. She typed back, "Good morning. I did make it home safely, and Perseus, my cat, forgave me for the late dinner. I'm free after 7 tonight if that works for you." His response came almost immediately. 7:30 at the Compass Bar. It's on 9th Street, quiet enough to actually have a conversation. Perfect. See you then, Harper replied, feeling butterflies in her stomach. The day passed both too slowly and too quickly. Harper tried to focus on her work, but her mind kept drifting to thoughts of Holden. By 6 o'clock, she was standing in front of her closet, trying to decide what to wear. "It's just a thank-you drink," she told Perseus, who was watching her from the bed with judgmental yellow eyes. "Not a date." The cat blinked slowly, clearly unconvinced. "Okay, fine, maybe I want it to be a date," Harper admitted, "but he's probably just being nice. I mean, he's a CEO of a successful company, and I draw pictures for a living." After trying on and rejecting 4 outfits, Harper finally settled on a green dress that brought out the gold flecks in her hazel eyes, paired with ankle boots and a leather jacket. Casual but put together, the perfect balance for a maybe date at a bar. The Compass Bar turned out to be an elegant space with dark wood, leather chairs, and soft jazz playing in the background. Harper arrived exactly at 7:30 and spotted Holden immediately. He was sitting at a small table in the corner, looking even more handsome than she remembered in dark jeans and a light blue button-down shirt that emphasized his broad shoulders. When he saw her, he stood and waved her over, his face lighting up with a genuine smile that made her heart skip a beat. "Harper, you made it," he said, as if he had been worried she might not show up. "I'm a woman of my word," she replied, returning his smile. "Especially when it comes to thanking my rescuers." Holden pulled out her chair, and Harper tried not to read too much into the gentlemanly gesture. As she sat down, a server approached their table. "Mr. West, good to see you again." "The usual." "Yes, thank you, James, and whatever the lady would like." Harper raised an eyebrow. "You're a regular, I take it." "It's close to my office," Holden explained. "And they make the best old-fashioned in the city." "In that case, I'll have one of those," Harper told the server, who nodded and left to prepare their drinks. "So," Holden said, leaning forward slightly, "how are you feeling after last night's experience?" "Much better, thanks to you," Harper said. "Though I did get an earful from my friend Olivia this morning. She's the one who set me up with Martin." "Ah, the well-meaning friend with questionable taste in setups. I'm familiar with the type." Harper laughed. "Exactly. She means well, but her idea of perfect for you usually translates to has a pulse and is single." "And what is actually perfect for you?" Holden asked, his blue eyes intent on her face. The question caught Harper off guard. It seemed simple enough, but there was something in the way he asked it that made it feel significant. "Honestly, someone kind. Someone who respects what I do and doesn't see it as just a cute hobby. Someone who treats servers well and doesn't expect me to be impressed by their salary." She paused. "Someone who would rescue a stranger from a terrible date, maybe." Holden's smile widened. "That's a pretty low bar." "You'd be surprised," Harper said dryly. "What about you? What's perfect for the successful CEO of West Architectural Designs?" "Someone real," Holden replied without hesitation. "In my position, I meet a lot of people who are interested in what I do rather than who I am. I want someone who would like me just as much if I was a high school math teacher." "Would you be a good math teacher?" Harper asked teasingly. "Terrible," Holden admitted with a laugh. "I barely passed calculus. Architecture is more about creative problem solving for me. The business side came later out of necessity." Their drinks arrived, and Harper took a sip of her old-fashioned. "Oh, this is good." "Told you," Holden said with satisfaction. "So, children's book illustrator, how did you get into that?" Harper was pleasantly surprised by his genuine interest. "I've always loved drawing ever since I was little. After art school, I was doing all sorts of freelance work, logos, advertisements, anything to pay the bills. Then a friend who writes children's books asked me to illustrate her story, and it just clicked. There's something magical about creating worlds for children to explore." "I can see that in your work," Holden said. "The way you use light and shadow in the Luna books, it's sophisticated but still accessible to kids." Harper felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the alcohol. "You really have read them." "I told you, expert status. I do all the voices too." "Now that I need to hear sometime," Harper said, then blushed as she realized the implication of sometime, that there would be other times after tonight. If Holden noticed her blush, he was gracious enough not to comment. Instead, he asked about her current projects, and Harper found herself eagerly describing the new book she was working on, about a shy turtle who discovers he can sing. The author, Eliza, has this wonderful way of writing stories that help kids with different challenges. The turtle represents children with performance anxiety, Harper explained. That's important work, Holden said sincerely. Books like that would have helped me as a kid. I was painfully shy until college. You, shy? Harper found that hard to believe, given how confidently he had swooped in to rescue her the previous night. Painfully. My older sister, Claire, used to have to order for me at restaurants because I was too nervous to talk to servers. The image of a young, shy Holden was endearing. And now you run a major company. How did that transformation happen? Architecture gave me confidence. When I found something I was truly passionate about, speaking up became easier. And then starting my own firm forced me out of my comfort zone even more. As they continued to talk, one drink turned into two, and then they ordered a small plate of appetizers because neither wanted the evening to end. Harper learned that Holden had started his company 10 years ago with just himself and one draftsman, and had grown it into a firm that specialized in sustainable, community-oriented buildings. She told him about growing up with her single mother in a small apartment where art had been her escape and her joy. "So Perseus," Holden said after their appetizers had been cleared away, "tell me about this judgmental cat of yours." Harper laughed and pulled out her phone. "Oh, you asked for it now. Prepare for an unreasonable number of cat pictures." She showed him photos of her large orange tabby in various states of lounging, judging, and occasionally deigning to be affectionate. "He's magnificent," Holden said, genuinely impressed by the cat's regal bearing. "He looks like he should be wearing a tiny crown. Don't give me ideas. He's already treated like royalty." Harper swiped to the next photo. "Your turn. Show me Athena." Holden pulled out his own phone and displayed a picture of a beautiful golden retriever with soulful eyes. "My loyal companion for 7 years now. She's gorgeous," Harper said, noting the obvious love in Holden's eyes when he looked at the photo. "How did you come to adopt her?" "She was actually a rescue. Previous owners couldn't handle her energy level. She was about a year old when I got her, and she destroyed 3 pairs of shoes and 1 sofa before we reached an understanding. And now she's the perfect lady, mostly. She still steals socks." Harper laughed, feeling more relaxed and happy than she had in a long time. There was something about Holden that put her at ease while simultaneously giving her butterflies. It was nearly midnight when they finally noticed the time. "I can't believe how late it is," Harper said, surprised. "We've been here for hours." "Time flies," Holden said, signaling for the check. "This has been really nice, Harper." "It has," she agreed, feeling suddenly shy. "Thank you for the drinks and the conversation." "It was my pleasure. Can I call you a car?" "That would be great, thanks." Holden insisted on paying for everything despite her protests. "You can get the next one," he said, making her heart leap at the implication of a next time, and then they stepped outside to wait for her rideshare. "So," Holden said, suddenly looking a bit nervous, "I'd really like to see you again, maybe for dinner this time." Harper smiled up at him. "I'd like that too." "How about Saturday? I know this great little Italian place, nothing like where we met," he added quickly. "Saturday sounds perfect." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, the night air cool around them. Harper found herself studying his face, the strong jawline, the kind eyes, the way his mouth curved into a smile that seemed reserved just for her. "Your car's here," Holden said softly, breaking the spell as a vehicle pulled up to the curb. "Right," Harper said, feeling oddly disappointed. "Well, good night then." "Good night, Harper." As she reached for the car door, Holden gently caught her hand. The touch sent sparks up her arm. "I'm really glad Martin was such a terrible date," he said with a grin. Harper laughed. Me too, Holden. Me too. She got into the car, and as it pulled away, she looked back to see Holden still standing there watching her go. For the first time in a long while, Harper felt a sense of possibility, of something wonderful just beginning. Saturday couldn't come soon enough. The rest of the week crawled by for Harper. She threw herself into her work, trying to distract herself from constantly checking her phone for messages from Holden. They had exchanged a few texts, nothing overly flirtatious, just friendly check-ins that nevertheless made her smile every time his name appeared on her screen. By Saturday evening, Harper was a bundle of nerves as she got ready for their dinner date. She had changed outfits 3 times before settling on a simple black dress that was elegant without trying too hard. "What do you think, Perseus?" she asked the cat who was watching her preparations from atop her dresser. "Too much, not enough," Perseus yawned widely, clearly unimpressed. "You're right, it's fine," Harper sighed. "I'm overthinking this." Her doorbell rang precisely at 7, and Harper took a deep breath before opening it. Holden stood there, looking devastatingly handsome in a charcoal suit with no tie, holding a small bouquet of wildflowers. "Hi," he said, his eyes taking her in appreciatively. "You look beautiful." "Thank you," Harper replied, feeling her cheeks warm. "You clean up pretty well yourself." Holden smiled and handed her the flowers. "These reminded me of the illustrations in your turtle book, The Meadow Where He Finds His Voice." Harper was touched by the thoughtful gesture. "That's incredibly sweet. Let me put these in water before we go." As she arranged the flowers in a vase, Harper marveled at how attentive Holden was. Most men wouldn't have noticed such a specific detail from her work, let alone remembered it when choosing flowers. "So I hope you like this place," Holden said as they left her apartment. "It's nothing fancy, but the food is authentic. The owner, Giuseppe, is from a small town outside of Naples." "It sounds perfect," Harper said. "I prefer cozy over pretentious any day." Holden had a car waiting for them, and as they settled into the back seat, Harper was aware of his presence beside her, the light scent of his cologne, the warmth of his arm nearly touching hers. There was an undeniable attraction building between them, a current of anticipation that made even this simple car ride feel significant. "So tell me more about your week," Holden said, turning slightly toward her. "Any breakthroughs with the singing turtle?" Harper launched into a description of her latest illustrations, the challenge of conveying a turtle's journey from shyness to confidence through subtle changes in posture and expression. Holden listened intently, asking questions that showed he was genuinely engaged, not just being polite. The restaurant was exactly as Holden had described, a small, intimate space with maybe a dozen tables, warm lighting, and the mouth-watering scent of garlic and tomatoes in the air. A robust older man with a magnificent mustache greeted Holden like an old friend. "Holden." "It has been too long, my friend." He embraced Holden warmly before turning his attention to Harper. "And who is this lovely lady, Giuseppe?" "This is Harper Daniels. Harper Giuseppe Morty, the heart and soul of this establishment." "Enchanted, miss." "Daniels," Giuseppe said, taking her hand and bowing slightly. "Any friend of Holden's is family here." "It's a pleasure to meet you," Harper replied, charmed by the man's exuberance. Giuseppe led them to a quiet corner table, already set with a bottle of wine in an ice bucket. "I took the liberty of selecting a special vintage for you tonight," he told Holden with a wink. "The lady deserves only the best." "No, she certainly does," Holden agreed, his eyes meeting Harper's with a warmth that made her heart flutter. After Giuseppe left them with menus, Harper raised an eyebrow at Holden. "Family here, huh? You must come often." "Giuseppe designed the original West family home in Italy," Holden explained. "When my parents moved to the States, they stayed in touch." When I was in architecture school, he opened this place, and I would come here to study. He'd feed me and tell me stories about Italian buildings. That's a wonderful connection, Harper said, touched by the personal history. So architecture runs in your family. My father was an architect, yes. He passed away 10 years ago, right when I was starting the company. In many ways, I built it to honor his legacy. There was a hint of sadness in Holden's voice, though it was clear this was a wound that had healed over time. I'm sorry for your loss, Harper said softly. He would be proud of what you've built. I'd like to think so, Holden said. He poured them each a glass of wine. But enough about that. Tonight is about getting to know you better, not dwelling on the past. They clinked glasses, and Harper felt herself relaxing into the evening. The wine was excellent, and when Giuseppe returned to take their order, he insisted on bringing them a selection of his best dishes to share. Trust me, you will not regret it, he promised, and he was right. The meal was extraordinary tender pasta with a sauce that tasted like it had been simmering for days, perfectly grilled seafood, fresh salads with ingredients Harper couldn't even identify, but that melted in her mouth. As they ate, the conversation flowed as easily as it had at the bar earlier in the week. Harper told Holden about growing up with her art teacher mother, who had encouraged her creativity from an early age. She used to let me draw on the walls of my bedroom, Harper remembered fondly. She said as long as I was expressing myself, it didn't matter if it was on paper or plaster. She sounds wonderful, Holden said. Is she still teaching? No, she retired a few years ago. She lives in Arizona now, painting desert landscapes and enjoying the sunshine. What about your mother? Is she still in the picture? Very much so, Holden said with a smile. She's remarried and lives in Boston. She's on the board of several art museums, actually. I think she'd adore your work. The casual mention of his mother approving of her work made Harper's stomach flip pleasantly. She was already thinking about meeting his family, which seemed both premature and somehow right. By the time dessert arrived, a tiramisu that Giuseppe insisted was made with love, the secret ingredient Harper felt like she'd known Holden for years rather than days. So, Holden said as they shared the dessert, I have a confession to make. Harper looked up, curious. What's that? I may have done a bit of research on you after we met. Professional curiosity, he added quickly. I looked up your other books, your exhibits. You're even more talented than I initially realized. Harper blushed. That's not creepy at all, she teased. I know, Holden said, looking genuinely embarrassed. But in my defense, you're a public figure of sorts. It's not like I hired a private investigator. Fair enough, Harper conceded. And did your stalking, research yield any interesting discoveries? Just that you're incredibly versatile as an artist. Your gallery pieces are so different from your illustrations, yet they have the same soul. I particularly liked the series on urban solitude at the Grenville Gallery last year. Harper was genuinely surprised. You saw that exhibit? Not in person, Holden admitted. But I found the online catalog, the way you captured light through city windows. It reminded me of Edward Hopper, but with more hope somehow. Harper stared at him. Most men she dated had barely pretended to be interested in her art, let alone sought it out and formed thoughtful opinions about it. What? Holden asked, noticing her expression. Nothing, it's just. That's probably the nicest thing anyone said about my work. Holden reached across the table and took her hand. His touch was warm and sure. I meant every word. You have a gift, Harper. The moment stretched between them, charged with something neither was quite ready to name. Finally, Giuseppe appeared with 2 small glasses of limoncello. On the house for the lovebirds, he announced with a beaming smile. They both started to protest that they weren't lovebirds, but the words died on their lips as they looked at each other. Maybe they weren't in love yet, but there was definitely something blossoming between them that felt significant. After dinner, they decided to walk for a while, despite the slight chill in the air. The city was alive around them, people hurrying to and from restaurants and theaters, street musicians playing on corners, lights twinkling in the early spring darkness. "I love this city at night," Harper said as they strolled along the river. "It feels full of possibilities." "It does," Holden agreed. He hesitated for a moment, then slipped his hand into hers. When she didn't pull away, he gave her fingers a gentle squeeze. Like anything could happen. They walked in comfortable silence for a while, their joined hands swinging gently between them. Harper couldn't remember the last time she'd felt this content, this perfectly in the moment. Eventually, they found themselves at a small park, where a jazz quartet was playing on a temporary stage. Couples were dancing on a makeshift dance floor, laughing and swaying to the music. "Dance with me?" Holden asked, turning to face her. "I should warn you, I'm not very good," Harper said. "Neither am I. We can be not very good together." Harper laughed and allowed him to lead her to the dance floor. Holden pulled her gently into his arms, one hand at her waist, the other still holding hers. They began to move to the music, a slow, sultry number that seemed to wrap around them like a cocoon. "For someone who claims not to be very good, you're doing just fine," Harper murmured as they found their rhythm. "I have excellent motivation to not step on your toes," Holden replied, his voice low near her ear. The proximity of him, his warmth, his scent, the solid feel of his chest under her hand was intoxicating. Harper found herself moving closer until her head was resting lightly against his shoulder. She felt his sharp intake of breath, then his arms tightened around her. They danced through 2 more songs, barely speaking, communicating instead through the gentle pressure of hands, the brush of bodies moving in harmony. When the music finally paused as the band took a break, they pulled apart reluctantly. "That was," Holden began. "Nice," Harper finished. Though the words seemed wholly inadequate, they looked at each other for a long moment, and Harper could see the question in Holden's eyes. He was going to kiss her. She wanted him to kiss her. But just as he leaned in, a group of rowdy college students burst into the park, shouting and laughing, breaking the spell. Holden smiled ruefully. "Perhaps we should call it a night." Though disappointed by the interrupted moment, Harper nodded. "It's getting late." This time, when Holden escorted her home, he insisted on walking her to her door. They stood outside her apartment, both reluctant for the evening to end. "I had a wonderful time tonight," Harper said, keys in hand but making no move to use them. "So did I," Holden replied. "In fact, I'm already thinking about our next date. If you'd like that, I'd like that very much." Holden stepped closer, his eyes searching hers. "Harper." "Yes." She breathed. "I'm going to kiss you now, if that's okay." Instead of answering, Harper rose up on her toes and pressed her lips to his. Holden responded immediately, his arms encircling her waist, pulling her closer. The kiss was gentle at first, then deepened as Harper slid her hands up to his shoulders. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathing a little faster. "Wow," Harper whispered. "Yeah," Holden agreed, his eyes dark and intense. "Definitely wow." He leaned in for another kiss, this one shorter but no less potent. When he pulled back, he tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his touch sending shivers down her spine. "Good night, Harper Daniels. Good night, Holden West." Harper watched him walk down the hallway, turning once to wave before disappearing into the elevator. Only then did she unlock her door, floating inside on a cloud of happiness. Perseus greeted her with a demanding meow, clearly unimpressed with her late return. "Oh, don't give me that look," Harper told him, bending to scratch behind his ears. "It was worth it, I promise you." As she got ready for bed, Harper replayed the evening in her mind, the wonderful food, the easy conversation, the dancing, and especially the kiss. It had been a perfect date, the kind she'd almost given up on experiencing. She fell asleep with a smile on her face, already looking forward to seeing Holden again. Over the next few weeks, Harper and Holden fell into a rhythm of seeing each other whenever their schedules allowed. He would drop by her studio with lunch when he had meetings nearby. She would meet him for quick coffee breaks between his appointments. On weekends, they explored the city together, visiting art galleries, trying new restaurants, or simply walking in the park with Athena, who had taken an immediate liking to Harper. "She's usually wary of new people," Holden had explained when Athena first bounded up to Harper, tail wagging furiously. "But she clearly has excellent taste." The physical aspect of their relationship developed naturally alongside the emotional connection. After their third date, a cooking class where they both failed spectacularly at making soufflés, Holden had kissed her goodnight with such passion that they'd barely made it inside her apartment before clothes were being hastily removed. That night had been the first of many they would spend together, discovering each other's bodies with the same enthusiasm they brought to learning about each other's minds. By the time 2 months had passed, Harper was spending more nights at Holden's spacious penthouse than at her own apartment. Perseus had even been introduced to Athena in a carefully supervised meeting that had gone surprisingly well, with the cat establishing immediate dominance and the dog accepting it with good-natured submission. "Look at them," Holden had said, watching as Perseus curled up on Athena's dog bed while Athena lay respectfully on the floor beside it. "They're like us." "Oh, and which one am I in this scenario?" Harper had asked, eyebrow raised. "Definitely Perseus," Holden had replied without hesitation. "Regal, independent, secretly affectionate, and completely in charge." The casual reference to affection had made Harper's heart skip a beat. They hadn't yet said, "I love you" to each other, though Harper had been feeling it for weeks. She was waiting for the right moment, afraid of rushing things, of scaring him away. What she didn't know was that Holden was harboring the same feelings, the same hesitation. Despite his confidence in business, in matters of the heart, he was still that shy boy who needed his sister to order for him at restaurants. The turning point came on a rainy Tuesday evening. Harper had been working late on a deadline, her eyes strained from hours of detailed painting. When her phone rang and she saw it was Holden, she answered with a tired but genuine smile in her voice. "Hey, you sound exhausted," Holden said immediately. "I am," Harper admitted. "This deadline is killing me. The publisher moved up the delivery date by 2 weeks. Have you eaten?" I think I had a granola bar at some point," Harper, Holden said, his tone gently chiding. "It's nearly 9 o'clock. "Is it?" Harper glanced at the clock, surprised. "I lost track of time. Stay there, I'm bringing dinner to you." Before she could protest, he had hung up. Harper looked around her messy studio paint-splattered table, reference photos pinned haphazardly to walls, empty coffee mugs scattered about, and grimaced. She hadn't expected to see Holden tonight, and her workspace reflected her single-minded focus on the project. She had just managed to clear a space on the small table in the corner when there was a knock at her studio door. Harper opened it to find Holden standing there, raincoat dripping, holding bags of takeout from her favorite Thai place. "You're amazing," she said, pulling him inside and taking the bags. "I know," he replied with a grin, shrugging off his wet coat. "But you're biased." As they ate dinner straight from the containers, Harper showing him her progress on the illustrations, she was struck by how comfortable this felt. Holden in her messy studio, discussing her work as if it was the most important thing in the world, bringing her food because he knew she would forget to eat when she was in the creative zone. "What?" Holden asked, noticing her thoughtful gaze. Nothing, just thank you. For the food, for understanding about the deadline, for everything. Holden set down his container and took her hand. Harper, there's something I need to tell you, her heart stuttered. Was this it? Or was this something else entirely? What is it? Holden took a deep breath. I've been offered a major project in Chicago, a sustainable mixed-use development that would take my company to the next level. Holden, that's wonderful, Harper said sincerely. When would it start? That's the thing. I'd need to relocate there for at least 6 months, starting next month. Oh, Harper felt her stomach drop. 6 months apart, just when things were getting serious. Well, that's a great opportunity. You have to take it. I don't have to do anything, Holden said, his eyes intent on hers. Not if it means losing what we've been building here. Harper was touched by his concern, but she couldn't let him turn down such an important project for her. We can make it work. There are phones and planes and it's only 6 months. It is only 6 months, Holden agreed. But the thing is, Harper, I don't want to spend even 6 days away from you, let alone 6 months. Harper's breath caught. What are you saying? I'm saying I love you, Holden said simply. I've been in love with you since that night at the restaurant, maybe even from the moment I saw you looking miserable with that awful date and decided I had to help. And I'm saying that I want you to come with me to Chicago. You love me, Harper repeated, her heart soaring. More than I thought possible, Holden confirmed. But if you're not ready for a big move, I understand. We can do long distance, or I can try to manage the project remotely, or Harper cut him off with a kiss, pouring all her feelings into it. When they broke apart, she was smiling through tears. I love you too, Holden, so much. Relief and joy washed over his face. Yeah. She kissed him again, then pulled back. But Chicago is a big decision. I would need to talk to my publishers, figure out if I can work remotely. And what about Perseus and your penthouse here, and Athena? Holden laughed, cradling her face in his hands. We can figure all that out. The important thing is that we love each other and want to be together. The rest is just logistics. Harper smiled, realizing he was right. Well, I am pretty good at drawing up plans, and you're literally an architect. Between us, I think we can design a solution. I like the way you think, Miss Daniels, Holden said, pulling her onto his lap. I like the way you love Mr. West, Harper replied, wrapping her arms around his neck. As they kissed again, the rain pattering against the studio windows, Harper marveled at how far they'd come from that chance encounter at Luciana's. A terrible date had led to finding the love of her life, a rescue that had turned into something neither of them had been looking for but both desperately needed. The move to Chicago wasn't without its challenges. Harper had to negotiate with her publishers about working remotely, and there was the matter of finding a pet-friendly place that could accommodate both Athena and Perseus. But Holden's company had connections, and within a few weeks, they had secured a beautiful apartment near the lake, with enough space for Harper to set up a proper studio. What do you think? Holden asked as they toured the empty space, his arm around her waist. This room would make a perfect studio, north-facing windows for the best light. Harper leaned into him, imagining their life here together. It's perfect. Not yet, but it will be, Holden promised, pressing a kiss to her temple. Once we make it ours. And they did make it theirs, blending their lives with a surprising ease that suggested they had been meant to find each other all along. Harper's colorful art pieces complemented Holden's more minimalist aesthetic. His organizational skills balanced her creative chaos. Even their pets settled into a comfortable dynamic, with Perseus claiming the sunniest spots in the apartment and Athena faithfully guarding the door. The Chicago project was demanding of Holden's time, but he made sure to carve out moments for Harper breakfast together each morning. texts throughout the day, dinner when his schedule allowed. And Harper threw herself into her work as well, finding inspiration in the new city, its architecture and energy feeding her creativity. 3 months into their Chicago adventure, Holden took Harper to the construction site of his project. It was a Saturday, the workers gone for the weekend, leaving the skeleton of the building to them alone. "I wanted you to see it," Holden explained as he guided her through the structure, pointing out features that existed only in blueprints and his imagination for now. "This central courtyard will have a community garden, and up there," he pointed to what would become the roof, "we're installing solar panels and a green roof system." Harper listened, entranced by his passion. In these moments, talking about his work, Holden was at his most animated, his most authentic. "It's going to be amazing," she said sincerely. "You're creating something that will help so many people." Holden smiled, touched by her understanding. "That's what I love about you, Harper. You see the heart of things, not just the surface." He led her to what would eventually be the central atrium, where a skylight was planned to allow natural light to flood the space. Currently, it was open to the sky, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the concrete floor. "I have something to show you," Holden said, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a small box, and Harper's heart began to race. "Holden," he opened the box to reveal a stunning ring of vintage-looking emeralds surrounded by small diamonds. "This was my grandmother's," he explained, his voice slightly unsteady. "My mother gave it to me last month when I told her I'd found the woman I want to spend my life with." Harper's eyes filled with tears as Holden dropped to one knee on the dusty concrete. "Harper Daniels, I know we haven't known each other very long in the grand scheme of things, but I've never been more certain of anything than I am of my love for you. You bring color and joy and creativity into my life. You make me laugh, you challenge me to be better, and you make every day an adventure. Will you marry me?" "Yes," Harper said without hesitation, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, absolutely yes." Holden slipped the ring onto her finger, then stood and pulled her into a kiss that was both tender and passionate, a promise of the life they would build together. Later, as they celebrated with champagne on the roof of their apartment building, watching the sun set over Lake Michigan, Harper couldn't stop looking at her ring, at Holden, at the city spread out before them. "What are you thinking?" Holden asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "I'm thinking about how lucky I am that Martin was such a terrible date," Harper replied with a laugh. "If he'd been even slightly decent, you might never have stepped in and we wouldn't be here now." "I'd like to think we would have found each other somehow," Holden said, nuzzling her neck. "But I'm grateful for Martin's awfulness too, and I'm even more grateful that you were brave enough to give another man a chance after that disaster." Harper turned in his arms, facing him. "Best decision I ever made. Even better than agreeing to marry me," Holden teased. "That wasn't a decision," Harper said, rising up to kiss him. "That was destiny." As they kissed, with the city lights beginning to twinkle around them and the future stretching out before them, full of promise and possibility, Harper knew it was true. From the moment Holden had stepped in to rescue her from that terrible date, they had been walking toward each other, toward love, toward a life neither of them could have imagined but both now couldn't imagine living without. Some things really were meant to be. They were married the following spring, in a ceremony that blended elegance with artistic touches that were uniquely Harper. The venue was a restored historical building that Holden's company had renovated, a perfect symbol of their union, combining his architectural vision with her artistic sensibility. Harper wore a simple but stunning gown with hand-embroidered wildflowers along the hem, reminiscent of the bouquet Holden had brought her on their first real date. Holden waited for her at the altar, his eyes never leaving her as she walked down the aisle on her mother's arm. The ceremony was intimate, with only their closest friends and family present. Holden's mother, elegant and warm, had welcomed Harper to the family with open arms. Harper's mother, artistic and free-spirited, had immediately bonded with Holden over their shared love of her daughter and appreciation for creative vision. "I knew you were the one for my daughter," Harper's mother had confided to Holden at the rehearsal dinner, "when she showed me the illustrations she'd been working on after meeting you. There was a new light in them, a joy that hadn't been there before. You brought that out in her." Their vows were personal and heartfelt. Harper promised to support Holden's dreams, to remind him to look up from his blueprints occasionally and see the world around him, and to love him through all of life's blueprints and sketches, through rough drafts and final designs. Holden vowed to be Harper's biggest fan, to create a home where her creativity could flourish, and to love her through all the colors of their life together, the bright, vibrant days and the softer, more muted ones. "I promise," he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion, "to never stop being the man who would step in to save you from a bad situation, who would put your happiness above all else, who would cross a room, a city, or the world to be by your side." There wasn't a dry eye in the house as they exchanged rings and were pronounced husband and wife. The reception was a celebration of their journey, photos of their time in Chicago, mementos from their first dates, and even a special appearance by Athena as the dog of honor, wearing a floral collar that matched the wedding decorations. Perseus, less amenable to public appearances, had remained at home with a pet sitter. Their first dance was to the same jazz song that had been playing in the park on their first date, the one they had swayed to under the stars before their first kiss. As they moved across the floor, lost in each other, Holden whispered in Harper's ear. "Happy, completely," she replied, her head on his shoulder. "You, beyond words." After the wedding, they honeymooned in Italy, visiting the small town outside Naples where Giuseppe was from and where the original West family home still stood. Holden showed Harper the architecture that had inspired his father and now inspired him, while Harper filled sketchbooks with drawings of ancient buildings, sun-dappled piazzas, and of course, Holden lounging on their hotel balcony, swimming in the Mediterranean, laughing over plates of pasta. When they returned to Chicago, it was with a renewed sense of purpose and partnership. Harper's career was flourishing, with a new series of books receiving critical acclaim and her gallery work attracting more attention than ever. Holden's project was nearing completion, a testament to his vision and determination. But more importantly, they had created a life together that honored both their individual passions and their shared dreams. Their apartment had become a true home, filled with art and books, architectural models and cat toys, the evidence of two lives intertwined. On their first anniversary, Holden surprised Harper with a special gift. He had commissioned a local glass artist to create a piece based on one of Harper's illustrations from the Turtle book, the one that had inspired their first date flowers. The glass sculpture captured the essence of her work in a different medium, translating her lines and colors into something three-dimensional and enduring. "Because that's what you've given me," Holden explained as Harper admired the piece, tears in her eyes. "You've taken the blueprint of my life and added dimension, color, meaning. You've made everything more beautiful." Harper's gift to him was equally thoughtful, a series of illustrated moments from their relationship, from that first rescue at the restaurant to their wedding day, rendered in her distinctive style, but with architectural details that reflected Holden's influence on her work and her life. "Because you've changed the way I see the world," she told him. You've taught me to look at structure and space, to appreciate the framework that holds beauty together. You've made me a better artist and a happier person." As they celebrated with a quiet dinner at home, Perseus and Athena curled up together nearby. Harper reflected on the journey that had brought them here. If someone had told her 2 years ago, as she reluctantly headed to that blind date with Martin, that she would end up happily married to a kind, successful architect who had stepped in to rescue her, she would have laughed in disbelief. Yet here she was, in the arms of the man who had crossed a restaurant to help a stranger and had ended up finding the love of his life in the process. "What are you thinking about?" Holden asked, noticing her contemplative expression. "Just how lucky we are," Harper replied, leaning into his embrace. "And how sometimes the worst experiences lead to the best outcomes. Like a terrible date leading to meeting your future husband," Holden suggested with a smile. "Exactly like that." Harper kissed him softly. "Thank you for not being able to mind your own business that night." "Thank you for being worth the intrusion," Holden replied, his arms tightening around her, "and for every day since." As they settled into their life together, Harper and Holden discovered that their love story was not just about the dramatic rescue or the whirlwind romance. It was about the quiet moments, too. The mornings sharing coffee before work, the text messages throughout the day just to say, "I'm thinking of you." The evenings spent in comfortable silence, her drawing while he reviewed plans, both content in each other's presence. It was about building a life together, day by day, sketch by sketch, blueprint by blueprint, creating something beautiful and enduring, a masterpiece of their own design. And it all began because a CEO couldn't stand by and watch a woman suffer through a terrible date. Sometimes, Harper thought as she fell asleep in Holden's arms each night, the most extraordinary love stories have the most ordinary beginnings. And sometimes, a simple act of kindness can lead to a lifetime of happiness. That, she decided, was the most beautiful design of all.